Hello. I am obsessed with how you move. Researching it, of course. I'm a dance activist. I study the power of movement in healing and empowerment. Across children and adults, across countries and cultures, I study how movement changes people. So naturally, I want to start by asking all of you guys to get up. Yes, all of you. I see you guys in the back. I want you to turn to your neighbor, maybe do a little high, and point right at your stomach.
Hi, how are you? Doing well, thanks.
And now I want you to focus all your attention to your neighbor's stomach. Really try and get a great view, because boy, do I have a great view from up here. Okay, you guys can stop. Thank you and have a seat. So some of you might have felt a little uncomfortable with that exercise. Granted, staring at a stranger's stomach is somewhat a weird thing to do. But I'm willing to bet that for most of you, is because you're not proud of your stomach. And for some of you, that part of you might be your nose, your butt, or your chest. Throughout my years of teaching dance, I've learned that some people are frightened of their bodies. They're afraid to use it to express themselves. They're afraid to draw attention to it. We've all heard the saying, dance like nobody's watching. But how many of us actually take that to heart? Why is it that we are so afraid? It's because we're chained down by our insecurities, our fears, and our worries. Today, I want you to break those chains, and I want to talk to you about healing through movement. Growing up, my insecurities manifested in an academic fashion. People would often only talk to me about three things: grades, summer programs, and extracurricular activities. It resulted in a very negative and competitive atmosphere, but I found that dance was my sanctuary from all of that. It was liberating. With dance, I had a community of people who believed in me, people who wanted to see me grow, people who wanted to see me succeed, and people who made me feel like I belonged there. And naturally, I wanted to share this feeling with other people. And in middle school, I'd been working heavily with some vision specialists for one of my projects. So I thought, why not hold a dance workshop at the California School for the Blind? So I did. I hauled my CD case and my boombox, remember those? Yeah. To a classroom full of girls patiently waiting for me, and boy, was I nervous. I had never taught dance to people who had some difficulty seeing me. But all of those feelings quickly died away as I saw how deeply they wanted to be engaged in dance with me. Despite the obvious visual obstacles, they showed me how movement could create a community. After we'd gone through the movements, I told them that they could take a break, but instead, they asked me to run the track again and again because they wanted to make sure they hadn't forgotten the sequence of steps. Throughout the class, when one student tried a step alone, others would pitch in with tips and tricks for maintaining balance and rhythm. They bonded as they struggled to master the movements in unison. And this experience showed me the power of dance. I was inspired to start Our Chance to Dance, a nonprofit organization focused on using movement to heal, empower, and connect people in our communities. And with every workshop, I was more and more amazed at what dance was doing to people. And since my first workshop in 2015, I have held dance workshops with the blind, the deaf, senior citizens, including those in wheelchairs, orphans, female domestic abuse survivors, and the general public. And I realized that dance was changing people right around me. Earlier this year, we had held a movement workshop series at the Central Institute for the Deaf, and at the end, we had a showcase performance for the parents. One of the moms came up to me after and she said, "Thank you." She told me how her son used to be incredibly shy, but after he started taking our workshop classes, he slowly opened up a little. He even started teaching the movements to his family at home every single week. And so naturally, as a scientist at heart, I wanted to better understand this. Why was movement able to do this? What was the power of movement? And over the past few years, I've gathered quite a few data points, so let me tell you what I found. Movement heals. How? By first making you feel vulnerable, then empowered, and eventually transformed. So let's start with this idea of vulnerability. Our vulnerabilities stem from our insecurities. At the beginning of my talk, I asked some of you guys to expose yourselves to me and the people around you. And that might have been hard for some of you, but that was a start. If I asked you to dance right here, with me, right now, you might hesitate or say, "No, Jessica, I don't really dance. I don't think I could do that. I'm good right here, trust me." But as someone who encourages people to dance with her quite often, I realized that what underpins this mentality of, "No, I can't really dance," isn't that you're bad at dancing. No. It's that you might be afraid, that maybe you're not good enough, or that you might look silly doing it, or maybe you're just afraid to be open. But that's exactly what I mean. Dancing at its core can make us feel vulnerable, because dance is just movement. You already do this. You move every day. Between you and me, the only difference is I chose to train and dance. But you and me, we both can dance. Okay, but Jessica, you've been dancing for 18 years. That's easy for you to say, right? But let me tell you about a time where being free and vulnerable wasn't easy for me. In high school, I had started to build up these walls around myself to shut out the negativity and the stress. But after some time, I realized that I had shut out so much more than just academics. I had started to shut myself out. The crazy, fun, sociable person that I had always been. And it struck me that there was a time in my life during which this wasn't the case. When I walk home, on the wall above our dining table, there's a picture of a young girl, her hands flailing in the hair, her face looking to the side. She's twirling. This picture depicted 2-year-old me at my first performance. I had run onto the stage in the middle of a community talent show, thrown my milk bottle on the ground, and started throwing out moves that I mimicked from my sister with no regard to the beat or the song choice and whatever I was doing, whether the two even matched whatever my feet were doing. And that was it. That was my first performance. Wild, free, and unencumbered. Completely vulnerable. At what point did we let ourselves lose this ability to embrace so openly what we were feeling? At what point did we let ourselves lose the ability to be so free? Over the past year, I've been interviewing dancers from around the world to listen to what movement means to them in their daily lives. I've talked with people who would only dance for a few weeks, to those who performed at the Super Bowl halftime show. And I learned that movement had affected people in ways I hadn't even imagined possible. I sat there listening to how Matthew used dance to battle depression and embrace the intersection of his Asian and bisexual identities. I sat there listening to how Maya used dance to overcome the trauma following sexual assault, how Kajal used dance to connect with her heritage, how Allison used dance to connect with those who were less advantaged, how Grace used dance to deal with the grief of lost loved ones. People were telling me about how dance gave them a sense of empowerment, comfort, and ownership. how dance permeated into every aspect of their lives beyond just the physical studio. They weren't attached to this title of being a dancer. No, they were attached to what dance had given them. And under all this, let me tell you a little secret. They had insecurities too. You and I are not alone in that. But they found that dance was a means through which they were forced to embrace what they were feeling and express it. It gave them a means through which they could take up space, both literally and figuratively, and do so unapologetically. They felt empowered. Dancing helped me heal, because when we tear down these walls that surround us mentally, we gain this ability to express ourselves freely. And as I became more confident with my abilities on stage, I became more confident with my abilities in the classroom. And so I found that movement was a way for me to heal. Now, some of you might ask, okay, I'm understanding what you're saying, but I'm quite healthy. How does this apply to me? I want to emphasize that healing comes in so many forms. Whether that's a physical injury that needs rehabilitation, or a spiritual or religious connection that was broken and needs mending, or an emotional bond that was broken and needs repairing, or just general everyday stress. Life is hard. But what if you could dance through it? Because the issue is, recognizing and coexisting with your insecurities is not enough. Putting those Band-Aids on those symptoms every day, not gonna cut it. You have to change yourself at the core. And so we get to this idea of your transformation. Movement forces you to stop being sedentary in your growth. Because by literal definition, to move, you have to, move. You have to get up, you have to get going, and you have to change. And it is through this change that you can heal. And that could start with just a single movement of your fingers, or even just getting up and out of here. Let's hope you don't do that. And so, dancing is a way for you to heal. Science has shown repeatedly that movement is highly effective in healing. According to studies carried out by the Memorial Sloan Cancer Kettering Center in New York, children freely expressing themselves through dance is how they actually first gain a sense of self and empowerment. Physiologically, dance changes your brain. We are evolved to do this. According to a study carried out by the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases, dancing, in comparison to other forms of fitness activity, actually led to larger brain volume increases in your insula, cingulate cortex, sensory motor cortex, and corpus callosum. These are the parts of your brain that are involved in communication, movement, attention regulation, memory retention. And most importantly, dance can help with depression, body image issues, and anxiety. 46.4% of adults in the United States will experience some sort of a mental health issue during their lifetime. That's either you or the person sitting next to you right now. That is 120 million people in the United States. That is frightening. But dance gives you the means through which you can think about yourself in a positive light. It asks you to engage with your community of dancers. It asks you to engage with yourself. So movement heals by first making you feel vulnerable, then empowered, and eventually transformed. So earlier this year, I put this idea of movement's healing power to the test. I was selected as a US delegate for the YMCA 175 conference celebrating the 175th anniversary of the YMCA. I traveled to London, where I was fortunate enough to hold a dance workshop for people from over 100 countries and 6 continents. And I focused the workshop on what I had learned. Movement heals. So we started with a mirror dance technique where I asked everyone to find a partner that they didn't know. And one partner stood there with his or her eyes closed and moved to the beat. And the other partner would then just copy that. And then eventually they switched. When you're moving with your eyes closed, you're more likely to do anything that comes to mind. You're more likely to express yourself. Because for all you know, the person standing over there, he's doing something crazy too. And so what do you have to lose? I then taught them the basic steps of Bhangra, a style of dance originating in northern India. When I asked the crowd how many people had actually danced Bhangra before, no hands went up. Out of over 100, none. But seeing no other hands go up made people realize that they weren't alone. They were more comfortable embracing their vulnerabilities and just kind of dancing. And so to take it a step further, I thought it could be cool to ask everyone to create their own dances. And that is where I witnessed the magic happen. Remember that none of them had danced Bhangra before. And so when I gave them 48 counts of Bhangra music to choreograph, I had no idea what to expect. But in 20 minutes, they did it. Let me show you what I saw. They not only created beautiful dances, they created them in formations. They added Bhangra moves to what they were doing and their own personality. They added their own steps to it. And I was so amazed because they went from strangers to co-inventors. They cheered on for each other's successes. And everyone knew that they didn't have the movements down perfectly. But honestly, in that moment, it didn't even matter. Because everyone was happy. And that is the power of movement. So they say, you are what you eat. And I say, you are how you move. Our bodies are an external expression for our internal states. And when we transform that external expression, we catalyze the transformation of this internal state. So if I see you with your shoulders slumped and your face looking down, I know that you might be having a bad day. And so you can sit there and think about it. But I'm encouraging you to get up and dance instead. Just get up, feel what you're feeling, let it out. Be vulnerable in the most empowering way possible. Because sometimes we want to express how we're feeling. But words just aren't enough. So if I see you encouraging others to dance with you, when I see those with disabilities and illnesses smiling as they make mistakes dancing, I see people who know their own self-worth despite the stigma. I see people who know their abilities despite their physical capabilities. I see growth, I see joy, I see empowerment, and I see you. Transformation starts with a single decision. We were given a world to explore and a life to live. So don't walk in it, dance. And I encourage you to join me in spreading and actively engaging in this message. Movement heals. And so I'll leave you with this. The next time you're feeling disempowered, ditch the Netflix account and the pint of ice cream screaming your name in the freezer. Instead, grab a friend or just look at your beautiful self in the mirror and ask, would you like to dance with me? Thank you.